Welcome back to Market It with ATMA, where we share the tips, tools, and strategies to help your business be successful. Thank you for joining episode 3 of the live podcast series. We are joined today by Bryan Acosta, CEO of Advent Trinity Marketing Agency, and he is going to help us learn how to not make mistakes during one of the most critical parts of your business strategy, the launch phase. Welcome back, Bryan.
Hey. Thank you guys for having me again. Appreciate
Thank you for joining us. So I'm excited about this portion, and I want to kind of just dive in. Let's start big. So why is launching so much more than just going live?
Yeah, so, going live, everybody wants to go live, and especially if you're a business owner, most business owners, they're eager to go live. Why? Because the return on investment, right? They're trying to get out there so that they can start to see the business flow, start to see the leads come in, and the excitement, right? And so I always have to kind of reel the business owners in and investors in, be like, hey, okay, listen, we've got to reel you back in, and remember, everything is about strategy. Everything is about making sure everything's aligned and working properly. So when you launch, it's not just about launching. It's and we talked about this earlier. It's it's more like an orchestra, right?
It is, but I can see the interest in having revenue come in. I mean, that's all business owners are thinking about, is when will my revenue come in?
Yes. So here's why I referenced the orchestra, though.
Okay.
So imagine an orchestra wanting to play. They get excited. What happens when people get excited? They let their emotions take away. They're not listening to the conductor. Errors start to happen.
Out of sync, absolutely.
Everybody starts to get out of sync, right? And then you'll notice very quickly, if something's wrong with the music, and if things don't sound right. That's what happens in marketing a lot of time. You have to make sure that every component is launched properly, effectively, and everything is in sync. And I think it's funny I chose this because I actually have a music background.
Yes.
I was a Dallas Cowboys drummer, right?
Yes.
Was in drumline, played in orchestra. I actually played in orchestra, percussion, right? And so this kind of touch base with me is this: you have to make sure that the music, when you go and listen to orchestra, you want to listen to something beautiful. You want to tap into emotion. That's right. The same thing with marketing. You have to make sure that every component is working properly so that the music, right, and it's completely engaging with the audience. So making sure that you're orchestrating each phase of the marketing during the launch, which is awareness, engagement, conversion, delight, and advocation. And sometimes you have to focus on one phase of the business, or one phase of the journey, the customer journey, during different phases of the seasons. Right?
Okay. Because there's ebbs and flows within the industry, right?
There's ebbs and flows. So when do you turn on the gas to try to get more leads? Or when do you pull back to say, okay, listen, they're not ready to convert. Let's try to get, our word out there. Let's get their, I had to say, but we do. We collect data, right? Getting them to the website, getting them to engage on social media, getting them to engage so that we can retarget them to convert later, right?
Absolutely.
And so just make sure your launching involves preparation.
Okay.
And this goes back to the strategy and the build phase. If you haven't listened to the past 2 episodes, you're starting to see why those phases were so important. The preparation of ensuring that you have the right creatives and you're able to measure. You have the right content. You have the right events set up. It's also not just about ensuring that you have a campaign and you have the right content. Do we have the right event set up so that you can track the customer? Did they did they turn into a lead? What pages did they jump on, right?
With that point, what are the most effective channels to launch a brand today, would you say? And how do you help clients choose which channel?
So that's a great question because there's no silver bullet.
Okay.
And a lot of businesses, they want that silver bullet. I want the secret sauce, the secret Krabby Patty sauce.
Yes.
Formula. Look how that's going for Plankton. That's a shameless plug for SpongeBob. I'm so sorry. But anyways, you can tell I'm a millennial.
It's all right. all right. So how do you choose?
So how do you choose is, you go back to the data. And here's some interesting data that we pulled from HubSpot. HubSpot is a multi-million-dollar company, right? And so they pull a lot of data from their CRMs and their studies for B2B. So if you're business to business, one of the top things that you should be doing is SEO and website. And I'm going to spend some time on this, so give me a second, okay?
Okay,
So
I was ready to ask my next one.
So SEO and website, okay? The reason why that's so important is making sure you have blogs is when you go to B2B, you think about it, right? Businesses aren't as like consumers. So B2C consumers buying shoes, when you're buying things for business, it's a bigger investment.
Yes.
And also, not only is it just a bigger investment, you're making decisions for the business, right? So you want to ensure that you're choosing the right product, you're choosing the right vendors, right? Because you don't want to be that person that hired a vendor or a product and it didn't work, right?
Right.
And it all falls on you. So there's all that consideration. So SEO website, we focus on making sure that you as the business are credible. Right?
The decision maker in the business, right?
Well, the website is designed to ensure that whoever's looking at the website is this business that I'm looking at, is it credible? Is it credible? Do they know what they're talking about? Can I trust them? So there's almost a longer process when it comes to B2B. Another thing is paid social for B2B.
Okay.
Paid social is huge because paid social, investing in things like LinkedIn and Facebook, right? Because you're most likely dealing with business professionals. They're rarely gonna. They may be on TikTok and may on Instagram, but they're not there for what? They're not there for business. They're not looking for things on Instagram, Facebook. Instagram and TikTok. They're looking for answers. So usually they're recruiting on LinkedIn, looking at blogs. They're looking for resources
or solutions to a problem, right?
Exactly. And then you got B2C. Okay, so B2C, I have some interesting data here I just found, right? So email marketing is still one of the biggest things you could do for B2C.
It doesn't surprise me, honestly, because it takes 6 to 8 touch points, right? For someone to see it consistently.
Yep. So email marketing is the biggest, return on ROI channel for B2C. You got paid social, of course, right? And content marketing. But content marketing is different when it comes to B2C. It's more about the product and what does it do,
right? And
what problems does it solve, right? So you got and here's some global discovery channel analytics here. Search engine, you would say 33% people make decisions on search engine. TV ads are still alive, everyone.
Wow.
At 32%. Okay. And when we saw TV ads, we're talking about like now people with TV ads. It's no longer just TV ads, it's streaming ads.
That's what I was going to ask. So if you're watching Paramount or if you're watching Freebie or any of those.
I'm watching Amazon and I see ads all the time.
Yes.
You got social ads, of course, right? Social media. And then the brand site itself. So social ads is 30%, brand sites is 26%. So here's the tip, right? You have to know where your audience is. You have to know where your audience is. And that goes back to ensuring that you do strategy and you do research so that you can be more, ensure that you're engaged with them. And making sure that you're conversion ready. So let's say for a SaaS program, right? A software as a service, you should be doing SEO and LinkedIn, right? When it comes to a direct consumer, which is B2C, you should be doing Instagram, email marketing campaigns, and any paid social where your audience lives. So,
okay.
It goes back, once again, to strategy. You have to define your target demo, right? And you have to flow out your buyer's journey. What does that journey look like, right? And then once you have that, then you map out the channels.
Okay, so we've talked about channels a little bit. Let's talk about budget. How much should people or a business owner be spending on the launch phase, and where should they be sending it?
All right, so here is where it gets finicky. Not finicky. I'd say it gets sensitive. Because people, they get lied to a lot on social media. Well, my friend didn't spend a lot of money on social, ads and things of that nature. Like, listen, the reality is this data that I'm about to give you comes straight from all the people like SBA, Small Business Administration. A lot of research has been done, but marketing budgets typically are anywhere between Should be
That's a very important part of this.
anywhere from 5 to 12% of total revenue.
Total revenue meaning?
Total revenue, as in not before expenses.
Okay.
We're talking like total revenue. So let's just, I don't have a calculator on me. Do you have a calculator?
I do not have a calculator on me.
I got I got my phone.
We're not going to go into too much calculation, but what
Here we
you're
go.
saying is there's a percentage, right? You already got it up.
So here we go. I'm gonna just do $1 million, right?
Okay.
And I'm gonna do that 5% here. So I want to be a millionaire.
Of course, everyone does.
Everybody wants to be a millionaire. I want my business to be a millionaire. Okay, so according to this data, you should be spending about at least minimum $50,000 a year.
So if they're projecting to gain at least $1 million in revenue, that's how much they should be spending on marketing dollars to make it to that level.
Yes. Yeah. So you've got, and that was on the low end, right? 5 to 12%. And then you have industries, varying. So you got manufacturing 5 to 7%.
Right.
Business services like this one, right? Is 10 to 12%.
So what do we do if we don't have that budget from the start?
You gotta go get funding. It's hard to say. You want to do traditional, networking and things of that nature that will help, but you want to have a proof of concept and proof of business, and then you're gonna have to either find an investment partner or get credit from the business, the banks. I'm sorry, because you have to have funds, and then once you have the funds, because I want to go into how you allocate those funds, right? Mm-hmm. Once you have those funds, okay, so this is where now we have how you allocate them, okay? Right. So if you were to allocate, here's kind of a simple guide. You want to allocate 30 to 40% on ads, especially if you're a startup.
And then that's on ads, not management fees, correct?
Not management fees. So you're talking Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, TV ads, radio ads, anything that you're paying to be broadcasted. Okay. You want to spend 20 to 30% on content. So email, blogging, landing pages, right? Here's an interesting thing, okay? Because credibility is huge. Now, you can either do, if you have customers and they're willing to do testimonials, this is the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, you want to spend some serious, at least 10 to 20% on influencer and partnership ads.
Okay, that was going to be my question later on in the show. Why influencer and partnership ads?
Because everything is about credibility. We can say all we want about our product and service. We have the best customer service.
Right.
We have the best, product in the world and this and that. And, as the owner, and as the creator of our intent, it tends to happen where we believe we are the best and we're passionate. But the market is not about what you think. It's about what the market thinks, right? And so if you're going to influence the market, you have to have other people speaking on behalf of your product or service.
Right, to create that trust and validation, right?
Yes, and here's the last thing, the 10%, because this is important because a lot of people don't factor this in. 10% needs to be on contingencies, like if something goes wrong, and analytical tools to track what you're doing because you don't just want to throw money into the market and not know how it's performing. And a lot of people do that.
Yes.
So they're just like, excuse me, they'll just go on and they'll throw Facebook ads, they'll do Google ads, and you ask them if it's working and they have zero idea. Well, I've got some likes and comments on my page, right? But they have zero idea of how that is actually turning into monetary value for their business, right?
And that's important because if you don't have those funds, especially contingency, don't start spending money on ad spend, right? Would you agree? Exactly.
And it's all about, you want to tie everything back to, how aggressive do you want to be in your velocity, right? And so, your velocity depends on how you're launching this and how you're managing those funds and where you're going.
So, and I was going to ask, can you explain what it means for someone to have velocity in their campaign?
Yeah. So launch velocity has a simple formula, right? Launch velocity equals the speed and the momentum of the acquisition and engagement that you're trying to accomplish during launch.
Okay.
How many likes do I want? How many people do I want watching these videos? How many people do I want commenting? How many people do I want following? How many people do I want inquiring? So here's something that I think different in my head, because when you're dealing with marketers, they're talking about conversions, right?
Right.
And we talk about cost per lead, we talk about cost per acquisition. So what is the cost per lead? It's the cost per if they put their information in and ask questions, right? And then the cost per acquisition is, did they actually come in and tour, or you do a free trial? Those are acquisition. How much did it cost to acquire a new customer? Okay. So here's my deal. Leads to me are not conversions, they're engagement.
That's important to know.
Yes, because here's what happens. To me, leads, they're inquiring, they're engaging, but they haven't converted yet,
Right.
A conversion to me is, did they actually pay you money? Okay. And so if you have to kind of know the and we talked about this in the first, is like 3% actually, it's what 3% actually, convert, right? That's a scary number. Okay. So how many leads do you need in order for you to get a true acquisition?
How many?
Yeah.
You have to figure that out, right?
Depends, yeah.
For sure.
And so when you're launching and your velocity, you kind of have to figure out that formula for your business, right?
Okay.
You have to take a look at your authority. How do you stand in the market? Have you taken a look at competitors? How do you rank against them? How many customers do they have compared to you, right? And how do you build that authority? Because at the end of the day, that's how you rank on Google too. It's about relevance, right?
So I do have a question for you now that you've said that. I get asked this question all the time. What's the difference between launching with ads versus launching organically without ads?
Oh, that's a good question, because there's a difference between posts and ads, and we get that all the time when it comes to social media.
Yes.
So paid ads is how you're paying. If you're paying directly to Facebook and Google to promote your post, your business, your page, your website, you're paying. And the thing about paid is it's predictable, and you can scale with it. It's immediate. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that because we're going to talk about organic, and it's not that organic isn't important, it's just the reality about organic. And I hate to say that this is a sensitive topic, especially in the marketing industry, because everybody has their thoughts. But
Absolutely.
I believe you got to do both. But you get immediate reach with paid. It's measurable cost per action, so you can actually see your measurability. Okay. And honestly, it's the best thing to do when you're starting a business is advertise, because that's how you launch. That's how you get people aware and engage with your business, right?
Yeah.
So organic, okay? So I didn't pay Facebook, I didn't pay Google, but now I'm posting on my page, and I'm posting, and I'm not seeing a lot, and I get this a lot, I'm not seeing enough. I post on my social media platforms, but people just aren't engaging. And I'll post on my personal, by the way, you have to understand that those are two different algorithms.
Very different algorithms.
Yeah. And so organic is about trust. It's about credibility. You think about what we're doing with this podcast. We didn't spend any ad dollars on this podcast, right? We're not spending, but we're using this organically to establish trust, credibility, and then when people convert, it tends to have a lower cost when it comes to converting, right?
Yes.
Because it was less budget spent on advertising and things of that nature. But the thing is that it takes longer.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a longer push, and they both go hand in hand, though. You can't do paid, and you can't just do paid, because that's a lot of money, and you can't just do organic. So the goal when starting a business is to start pushing with advertising, use organic to build trust.
Right.
And then as both of them start to go parallel, your cost per lead and cost per acquisition starts to go down, because people trust you more. Think of it. If you're a startup business with a new product, a new solution, and people are skeptical, right? They're going to be like, do I really want to do this? So your cost per lead is what?
Higher, of course. Right.
But the more and more people start to use it, which is the organic, right? The more and more people that actually start to use it, and the organic posts and stuff like that, the more people start to organically start to research you, organically start to go to your website. Now the cost per lead starts to come down, cost per acquisition starts to come down, right? And now that spend that traditionally that you were getting, cost per lead, if my cost per lead and acquisition is up here, now it starts to go back down to your original goal. And then eventually, as you build big brand, a big business, now that gets extremely low.
That's
right?
important to know because, like you said in the beginning, having that budget's important because it looks like initially you're always going to be a little bit higher and then it'll start to level out on the ad spend and things like that, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like expectations, especially when starting a business, is that you have to, and my mentor, and he's an investor, okay? He's always, remember, he's actually invested in stocks, right? And he always says, if you're investing in a flip, you're already lost, right? Because eventually you'll start to make mistakes. You always have to think long term. The biggest investors out there, they invest strategically for the long
term. Okay. With that being said, can you tell us any recent campaigns that you've had that have been successful? Put your money where your mouth is, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I got two actually. It's funny. No, actually, wow! I just thought about it. I got like 3 or 4 now. Okay, let's start with the ding ding ding. Okay, let's start with the one in house here. Okay, it's a Nuvadesk co-working. Okay, so that one, believe it or not, took a while. Okay. It took 2 years for it to finally take off.
Wow.
But once it did, it blew up, right? And then one thing that we did, one campaign that we strategically did that kind of like, really pushed it was when we launched events.
Interesting.
Okay? So co-working, just kind of background, co-working spaces, like co-working office spaces, shared desk. You got this podcast room, media production room. But once we said, hey, we're going to do events where we bring the outside community in for networking and for lunch and learn. But, most co-working space, believe it or not, what they'll do is they'll do events, but only for the members. What we did was we did public, right?
Interesting.
And we did public because the goal was not, hey, we just want members to be involved. The goal was lead generation. We wanted people in the facility.
The brand awareness, the trust.
So the lead generation, I kid you not, this is crazy. The lead generation from 1 year without events to the other was 30,000% increase.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 30,000% increase.
Astronomical.
So we went from like 1,000 emails in the CRM to like, I think they're at like 8,000, 9,000 emails in the CRM.
Wow, that is incredible. It is
Yeah.
incredible. So what was your second?
The second one was a law firm. Okay.
Interesting.
And believe it or not, they actually launched without us first. Right? Interesting. You know about this and you're saying interesting.
I am, because it is interesting. I love hearing it from someone else, but this is an important story to tell because this is where most of our clients come from this kind of navigation through the marketing world. So I'll let you elaborate.
So oddly enough, it was funny because they came to us, and this goes back to the launch point about ads versus organic.
Yes.
Okay. Here it is. So this is a startup law firm, right?
Absolutely.
And their budget was backwards. Okay. So what happened was they came to us and I said, this doesn't make sense, right? You guys are a new law firm and you're doing more organic and not enough ads. Like, it doesn't make sense. So we took the strategy. We still did discovery. I wanted to understand specifically how to help them. And once we flipped the budget, miraculously, they went from 3 leads a week to 3 leads a day. Like, that's a massive difference, right?
That was within the first couple of months.
The first couple of months, they were like, I'm completely booked. Like, what am I doing? Which is good. I like those stories.
Running out of time and space, but it's a great problem to have.
And another one, the final one I have an example of is we actually had an ultrasound company, right? And, it came to us and part of the problem was that they had one division service that was doing well, but the other ones were like kind of blank,
right?
Non-existent. And then once we built the right campaigns, we built the right strategy. Goes back to strategy and build phase. So we had the right assets, and then we launched properly to target the other segments. Now all of a sudden they're getting phone calls for these different services that they're providing, and honestly, I believe they doubled their phone calls, right?
Yes, and they had been in business for 20 plus years.
25 years.
Before all of this actually came to fruition within their area.
So it's funny. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business.
That's right.
It goes back. Did we strategize? Did we build the right content and assets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was the website optimized? Do I have the right videos to get people engaged, to get people asking questions, to get people to convert? Do I have those assets prepared and ready? And now we launch.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing those with us. So let's get back to make sure our listeners and our owners understand completely, what's one common launch misstep that can completely kill your momentum once you launch? You think you got it all in order. What's one common misstep?
I mean, it really goes back to, did I look at the data before I even started to touch anything? One big mistake is that the launch, it's not working. So they start freaking out because no matter what you look at it, people are like, well, I'm very strategic, and I have a lot of people that think that they're very analytical, but the problem is that they get overexcited,
very much
or they get allow emotions to consume the direction of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And we get it, because when dealing with money, and people are like, well, I don't make emotional decisions. I don't care who you are. You could tell me you don't make emotional decisions. Buddy, you are the biggest liar in the entire world.
When it comes to money, I'm going to be emotional.
When it comes to money, okay? When it comes to money, you have to keep your emotions in check to your best of abilities, because what happens is they'll try to pivot. They'll try to change a campaign mid-campaign. They have zero data. The only thing that they see is that we're not getting leads, but they don't know exactly what's going on in order for them to make a strategic adjustment to actually make it start working.
Right.
That's one of the biggest mistakes, is that they try to optimize without even knowing what the data is telling them. Okay.
Right.
Which is why you need to make sure you have analytical tools to be able to track that. 80% of product launches require post-launch pivot. Lack of flexibility kills campaigns. This is a big one. So 80% of product launches, if you don't have flexibility, which it goes really back to the build phase, if you don't have enough assets to make adjustments, like what happens is I launch a campaign, but I only want to launch one campaign. I don't have any backup campaigns ready.
Oh no. So what if the market doesn't like that one campaign?
Then that's the 80% that you were part of.
Well, I wouldn't say me, but yes, I completely understand it. Okay, well, that's very important to understand.
Oh, I got more if you want.
No, you can give us a couple more.
Okay, here we go. So I got 3 more. Here you go. So, pausing ads early. So this is, oh my gosh. I think, Ruben, who's our SEM person, could have literally an entire tantrum over this, because it's true. What happens is I don't see it's working. So just pause it. Oh, you know what? Turn it back on. Wait, pause it. You know what? Turn it back on. Wait, pause it. So
no.
Guys, if you're listening to this, you are dealing with artificial intelligence. You're dealing with algorithms, okay? When you turn it off, you mess with the algorithm. It doesn't matter if it's Facebook. It doesn't matter if it's TikTok. Don't turn off campaigns.
For how long? How long should they leave a campaign on before they consider it?
3 months. 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It is a long
time. So
time.
before you launch it, that's part of the importance of making sure you have everything set up correctly.
You've got a plan before you execute.
Yes.
Always. And so, typically you can probably get away with monthly, right? Making monthly adjustments.
But at least 30 days.
Yeah. But what happens is people want to make huge shifts and huge changes mid campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kills a campaign.
Wow.
It really does. Another error is relying on digital ads and ignoring the other stuff, right? The direct mailers and the just the organic networking and things of that nature.
Organic network, referral based.
So I always tell people, I'm a salesperson too, and we have a phrase in the gym industry. Story's laughing because I think she knows what's coming. What do you think my phrase is?
No, I'm not going to say. I'll let you be the one to divulge it. I think I
Okay.
hear it a lot, though.
You live. You just okay. You
I'm
live.
going to make him say it.
You live by the walk-in, you die by the walk-in. And that is so true. So if you rely on digital marketing and advertising to grow your business, and you're like, hey, that's like, putting your eggs in one basket.
That's
and
right.
then, praying to God something, works. And the thing is, you live by the walk-in, you die by the walk-in, right? If you don't have, and this is, a lot of people will just, I'm just gonna rely on Google. I don't have anything else, and that I've heard it so many times, and I'm like, listen, that is not a good business model.
Absolutely not.
You have to have inbound and outbound marketing. Okay, you have to have somebody out there representing your business. Think about how we started a business. We're a digital marketing firm, and yet we were out there in the chamber. We were out there networking.
We're still out there.
We're still out there because relationships is still number one. Advertising is definitely going to get you leads, but we're not going to allow. Even with slumps like this, right, in the summer, because people are on vacation. You guys are probably on vacation right now, listening to this on the beach or somewhere, right? I'm over here working. Good for you.
You're optimizing it, though. Your downtime, you're optimizing, correct?
Optimizing for content creation, organic, right? And so, those are just a couple of things that I see that are errors that people just, at the end of the day, they're just emotional because it's an emotional time. Launching a campaign, I want to make sure it works, and they're making emotional decisions instead of tactical and data decisions.
Wow. So to your point, what you're saying is if somebody were to be launching today or tomorrow, what's the first thing they should do? Just to reiterate what you kind of just went over. If they're launching today, what's the first thing they should do?
You have to make sure you understand what your goals are. Right? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it lead generation? Is it engagement? Like, where do I start? And at the end of the day, it starts with awareness, right?
Absolutely.
You can't expect people to convert if people don't know who you are, right? You have to set goals of what those cost per acquisitions are. Do you understand the industry standards in your industry and how much those cost per lead is, right? So setting goals, making sure you yourself understand how much those leads are going to cost. You yourself understand how much those acquisitions are going to cost, right? Doing that research. You have to do the research, understanding the audience, understanding who you're trying to target, making sure, is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok, right? You have to create a blueprint, right? Of how you're going to scale. Are you going to lean on emails, SEO, social-based testimonials? You have to actively track what's going on through your portal, right? What kind of portal do you have? And are you tracking your dashboards? Are you tracking your Google ads, your Facebook ads? Are you tracking? And can you truly tell if I were to sit down with you, and I sit down with you and I say, hey, what is your cost per lead, right? How much does one lead cost you?
And do you know?
And do you know? And then how much does one customer cost you? And do you know? And if you can't do that, it's because you don't have the right tools in place to track that on an ongoing basis.
Right. And when you have those analytical tools, to your point about campaigns, do you have the funding to shift the campaign?
Right,
if
exactly.
need be.
Which goes back to that 10% contingency.
Right.
Do you have a 10% contingency plan, right? And so it's just it really boils down to, if you didn't listen to the first 2 episodes, I would recommend you go back and listen to strategy. Did you strategize? And did you build the right assets to properly launch? Because your goal for the launch, and let's just be completely honest here, your goal for the launch is just 2 things. Can I get them to engage? Which is, inquire and ask you questions, and can I get them to convert into customers? That's what the launch phase is about. It's how do I get out into the market? How do I get them asking questions and in the doors, and so that we can treat them or give them the product or service and convert them from a prospect, somebody who doesn't know who you are, to a actual customer.
Right. And the launch phase, with that being said, you have to sustain that phase for a while to understand where you need to shift to, where you don't need to shift to before you even move on to grow, correct?
Yep. You can't even, we didn't even most people don't even hit the grow phase until sometimes even year 2 or 3.
To really optimize your strategy. Okay, great. Well, you've given us some actionable insights today, Bryan, and I want to turn it over to some of our questions from the audience.
Take it away.
Are you ready for all these questions?
Sure.
Okay, so the first one I've had up for a while, and I wanted to make sure I addressed it, is I'm launching a new product, but my audience is split between 2 platforms. Should I double efforts or pick one to focus on first?
Okay, great question. If you are just launching, you need to double up. And here's why you double up. Because, yeah, I know. But how do you know what channel? You don't. You don't know what channel because you haven't spent any money until you have real data. You can think, you can have theory,
right?
In theory, but a lot of people do theory and they don't make it, right? You have to test, and you have to have the funds to do it. So go ahead and get both of the campaigns up, test for about a month, 30 days.
30 days, okay.
Right, and then see what happens, and then be like, okay, which one got the most engagement? Which one are people actually inquiring? Which one are people asking questions and commenting? And then you kind of, it's the rule of A/B testing. Are you doing A/B testing? That's why it's called A/B testing.
Okay, so if one is doing much better, you want to increase your funds to that campaign and decrease the other?
Yep, it's just like stocks. Think about it, the stock market.
Very true.
You move one stock to another, right? It's the same thing in marketing.
Okay, great. That was a great answer to that question. Now, I have a second question. Is it better to build hype before a launch or to focus more on follow-up emails and follow-up information after?
Yeah, it's kind of, that's funny, but you got to do both.
Okay.
So here's what happens is you have to build the hype to get people to get excited because everything's about emotion.
Right.
And then you launch, right? And because what you're asking is leading into the next episode, which is the grow phase, which is what happens when you have all these inquiries, what happens when you have all these people asking questions, what happens when you have all these leads, what do you do? And how do you nurture those contacts? Because they might inquire with you, but they aren't ready to actually buy and make a buying decision. So we'll talk about that next episode, but you should be doing both. You have to build a hype because you have to get excitement, and everything's about emotion. But here's the deal. If you just focus on excitement at the front end and you don't focus on the back end, what ends up happening is buyer remorse is real, guys.
It really is. And that's the worst thing to have a client have.
Yep.
Is buyer remorse.
And by the way, it's going to happen. It always happens, actually. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Buyer remorse is real. And if you're not nurturing those relationships, also, people aren't, if people are, not prone to make a decision on the first inquiry.
Okay. See, those are great points to remember. Even I needed to remember those at some points because sometimes we slack off on that follow-up. But we'll discuss that more on the next show. A third question I have, do you recommend using influencer marketing? Influencers are a big deal, it seems like, this day and age. And how do I pick the right influencer for my business?
That's a great question. So influencer is here, guys, and it is important. Influencing is so important to influencing the market, Okay, marketing. I'm gonna say that a lot, by the way, during this podcast. Is at the end of the day, root word is marketing is market, which is why we call it Market It with ATMA. So you have to be able to know how to influence the market, and the only way to do that is you as a business owner. You get excited all the time. You even a manager. I've got the best product. I've got the best service. We're the greatest of all time. You saying that is different than somebody else saying that.
Absolutely.
So influencers, there's all forms of influencers. So let's dive into this. And influencers could be a couple of groups, right?
Okay.
The first one is what everybody wants to be. When they grow up, they want the big influencers. They want the mammoth influencers. They want the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson type influencers.
Wouldn't we all love that?
Yeah. So you got the large. Obviously, they're a lot of money, right? They're gonna cost you millions of dollars. Okay. So let's tone it back here. Now let's go into the influencers, micro influencers. Micro influencers are those who are local, maybe more industry specific.
Okay.
And they're going to cost you a lot less. They have a following. but they're here to help you. They might not get all the conversions you want, but they're going to help you get the credibility.
Okay.
Now, the influencers that people don't think about, your employees.
Ooh.
Right. So your employees, you yourself and your employees, getting them involved, doing, talking points and making them thought leaders and doing stuff on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff. And then finally, your customers, influencers.
Why not, right?
Getting them to do testimonials, right?
That's
and
great.
So people don't realize the amount of levels of influencers. They're just thinking about the big mammoths. But you have to get creative, especially if you have a low budget. And you have to kind of have a strategy of both using multi-influencers. I would, as a small business, I would focus on micro-influencers if you don't have any customers. If you have customers, I would do micro-influencers, customers. And if you have employees, I would do all three.
Oh, nice. Those are good tips I hadn't thought about before. So last question, guys. If you have any more, feel free to put them in the chat. But this is the last question I have for now. If my last launch flopped, how would I recover and relaunch without losing that trust?
So that's a good question. So if your last campaign flopped, it goes back to, hey, you're going to have to take a step back and go do a strategy first. So go listen to the strategy podcast and strategize, do a plan, and then you're probably most likely going to have to rebuild most of your assets. Because what happened was, if it didn't work, it wasn't the money you spent or what was spent. I would say 80% of the time it's you just did not get your message across. Okay. And it goes back to the assets. Do I have the right testimonials? Do I have the right content? So ensure that go back, re-strategize, rebuild, and then relaunch.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for giving us so much insight, Bryan. Is there kind of a summary you can give us of what our business owners or entrepreneurs should really take away today?
Yes. So, one key point is launch equals you want to make sure that it's a full orchestra.
Okay.
Right. Don't go back to the music. Okay. So go back to the music. Is everything in tune? Everything working together? You're not just going live just to go live.
Okay.
And did you choose the right channels? And did you strategize to ensure that you have the best ROI? Did you create a smart budget, right? An adjustable budget that aligns with how you're spending, but also, is it flexible? Can you move it around? And then did you create a blueprint for velocity, right? How are you going to speed things up? How are you going to slow things down? Because the thing about velocity is, when we think about velocity, all we think about is how fast we're going. But in any kind of race, right, there are turns, there are hills, right? Think about the motor, these NASCAR and different types of racing, motorsports, right?
Yes.
There are going to be curves, there are going to be turns. Is how do you adjust to those turns? You got to slow down and then speed up, then slow down,
That's
then speed
very true.
up, right? So velocity is how are you controlling that velocity? Okay. Are you blending paid and organic? Because you just can't just do one. And I don't care, I'll probably get bad mouths like, you don't run organic properly or this and that. And a lot of marketers, they have this internal battle because there's ad marketing businesses, and then there's just organic. And the reality is, you need both. A true business needs both. Okay. Make sure that you're looking at data and you're preparing. So you're gonna have pitfalls.
Yes.
Okay. You're gonna have flat tires. Look at NASCAR. I like how I'm just using these analogies, right?
But the pit crew's important, right?
Exactly. We're here. Okay. But you're gonna have pitfalls. Are you able to adjust? So, but at the end of the day, it starts with clarity. Did you strategize? Make sure you strategize. Make sure you have a plan of action and a budget to launch to the proper channels.
Wonderful. Great advice, Bryan. And thank you so much for showing us how to launch with impact, intention, and the whole package of how to make your business grow. To our audience out there, please, if you have an interest in really taking your business to the next level, go to adventtrinity.com and schedule an appointment with us. And until next time, we will see you.